The dust settled like a final breath over the shattered town, cloaking the world in a gray veil that muffled even the wind's whisper. Sam trudged through the remnants of what had once been Main Street, his boots crunching softly on fragments of live, splintered wood from porches where families had laughed, twisted rebar reaching up like skeletal fingers from the earth. He was 19, but the weight on his shoulders felt ancient, a hollow echo in his chest where purpose should have been. Why me? The thought looped in his mind, unbidden, a ghost haunting the ruins of his thoughts. Why did I wake up when they didn't? The air tasted of chalk and regret, cold, seeping through his torn jacket like an accusation. In the distance, a faint howl cut through the silence. Not wind, not debris shifting, but something alive, raw, pulling at the frayed edges of his numbness. It was a sound that mirrored the crack in his soul, a quiet promise that despair wasn't absolute, not yet. The town sprawled before Sam like a jagged grave, its once cozy homes now crumpled monuments to sudden fury. Cracked pavements spiderwebbed underfoot, buckling into craters where the ground had roared and split, swallowing cars and streetlights whole. Twisted metal from a fallen water tower groaned in the biting winter wind, which carried the scent of damp earth and exposed wiring, sharp metallic like blood on the tongue. Snowflakes began to drift down, incongruous in their delicacy, dusting the debris with a false purity that only highlighted the chaos, a child's red shoe half buried in rubble, its laces frayed and forgotten, a flickering emergency light from a toppled ambulance pulsing weakly like a dying heartbeat. The mountains loomed in the distance, indifferent guardians, their snow-capped peaks mocking the fragility below. Sam's breath fogged the air, each exhale a reminder of his unwelcome survival, the cold gnawing at his fingers until they ached with the same emptiness that gripped his heart. This place was a mirror to his despair, every shattered window reflecting the fractures within him, every shadow whispering of isolation. Then from beneath a collapsed storefront, its sign reading Hope's Diner. In cruel irony, a faint scrabble echoed like claws scraping against stone, drawing him closer despite the instinctive pull to flee. Sam's steps faltered as he neared the rubble, the scrabble growing insistent like a heartbeat buried alive. But it wasn't the sound that halted him. It was the weight crashing down inside a tidal wave of numbness that had been building since the ground first trembled. He dropped to one knee, his hand pressing against a jagged concrete slab, fingers digging in until they bled, but he felt nothing, not the pain, not the cold. Why bother? The thought slithered through his mind, coiled and venomous. Everyone else is gone, Dad, with his unshakable calm during floods and fires. Mom, her voice a lighthouse in storms. They were the rescuers, the ones who pulled life from chaos, and I just survived. By accident, by cowardice. His breath came in shallow rasps, fogging the air like ghosts of accusations, his eyes fixed on a crumpled photo half buried in the dust, a family smiling whole, mocking his isolation. Tears didn't come. They hadn't since the quake. Instead, a paralyzed fog settled his body, frozen, as if the earth had claimed him too, pinning him in place with invisible debris. The scrabble intensified, a desperate clawing that echoed his inner turmoil, pulling at the edges of his stupor, whispering that maybe, just maybe, saving something, anything, could shatter the void. But fear gripped harder. What if I fail again? What if caring only digs the grave deeper? The scrabble ceased abruptly, replaced by a low, ragged whimper that cut through the haze like a knife. Sam leaned closer, parting the dust with trembling hands, and there they were, two amber eyes gleaming from the shadows of the rubble, fierce yet fractured like embers in a dying fire. The German shepherd lay pinned beneath a fallen beam, his black and tan coat matted with grime and blood, his body a map of scars that spoke of battles already lost. Those eyes didn't beg. They challenged, holding Sam's gaze with a raw vulnerability that mirrored his own hidden wounds, as if saying, "I've survived worse, you." A shiver ran through Sam, not from the cold, but from the unspoken recognition, a silent thread weaving between them in the desolation. He hesitated, his hand hovering the moment, stretching like a taut wire ready to snap into change. This wasn't just a dog. It was a reflection, a promise of something stirring in the ruins, a bond forged in shared breakage, hinting that from this wreckage purpose might rise. In the flickering haze of memory, Sam saw his father as a giant among men, broad-shouldered and unyielding, his hands steady as anchors during the floods that had ravaged the valley years ago. Back then, Sam was just a boy, trailing behind like a shadow, watching Dad command rescue teams with a quiet authority that turned chaos into order, pulling families from submerged homes, his voice a beacon cutting through the roar of water. "We don't choose the storm, son," he'd say, clapping a hand on Sam's shoulder, "but we choose to fight them." Those hands, calloused from ropes and rubble, had taught Sam to tie knots, to read the sky for danger, to believe that saving one life could redeem 1,000 failures. But the earthquake had stolen that world in an instant, the ground swallowing Dad whole as he shoved Sam clear of a collapsing roof, his final shout lost in the thunderous crumble. Mom gone too, buried in the same merciless shift, leaving Sam adrift in a sea of what-ifs. The legacy he'd inherited wasn't strength, it was guilt, a gnawing regret for turning away from rescue work after high school, chasing vague dreams of escape from the town's suffocating embrace. Now in the ruins that passed, vitality mocked his present emptiness, a fractured mirror showing a boy who had once burned with purpose, now reduced to ashes, searching unconsciously for a spark to reignite the fire his father had lit. Sam's days blurred into a monotonous fog, each one a ritual of survival etched in the cold bones of the ruined town. He rose with the pale dawn filtering through the cracks of his makeshift shelter, a tarp draped over a half-standing garage, his body moving on autopilot, numb to the ache in his limbs. Breakfast was whatever he scavenged, a stale energy bar from a toppled vending machine washed down with water from a leaking pipe that tasted of rust and regret. He avoided the mirror shards scattered in the debris, unable to face the hollow-eyed stranger staring back, his once boyish features sharpened by hunger and sleepless nights haunted by echoes of screams. The routine was his armor patrol the edges of the rubble for signs of life, dig half-heartedly at promising shifts in the stone, then retreat to the shelter as dusk fell, curling into a ball against the encroaching chill. It was emotional paralysis disguised as pragmatism, each repetitive step a barrier against the void, the empty house of his soul reflected in the skeletal frames of homes around him. Connection felt like a distant myth. He spoke to no one, his voice rusty from disuse, his thoughts a looped defense. Don't get close, don't hope, don't fail again. Yet in the quiet moments as the wind whistled through the gaps, a faint pull stirred an unconscious echo of his father's legacy, urging him to listen for cries in the silence. The German shepherd's body told a story of betrayal etched in flesh and bone, his black and tan coat a patchwork of scars that whispered of forgotten battles. Pinned in the rubble, he lay with a stillness born of exhaustion, his flank rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths that stirred the dust like faint ghosts. A deep gash ran along his side, crusted with blood and grit, a wound from the quake's merciless grip, but older marks spoke louder, whip-thin lines across his muzzle, a limp in his hind leg from a chain that had once bound him too tight. He had been a search and rescue dog, once trained by a handler who abandoned him mid-mission during a wildfire 2 years back, leaving him to fend through flames and famine, his trust shattered like brittle glass. Survival had honed him, ears perpetually alert, even in pain, twitching at every distant rumble. Eyes amber and piercing, scanning for threats with a predator's precision, yet shadowed by a mute plea that betrayed his isolation. He didn't whine for pity. His low growls were defenses, walls built from abuse, his body tense as coiled wire, ready to snap. This pain mirrored Sam's own, a deep mistrust of the world that had taken everything, a silent scream for connection buried under layers of self-preservation. As Sam approached, the dog's gaze locked on him, not with hope but with wary assessment, his scarred form a living testament to endurance, hinting at the powerful past, now reduced to desperate instinct. In the dim light filtering through the cracks of the ruined diner, Sam and the dog faced each other like reflections in a fractured mirror, their emptiness echoing in silent harmony. Sam's hands, still hovering near the rubble, trembled with the same hesitation that kept the dog's muscles taut, both flinching at the ghost of vulnerability. He saw in the animal's scarred flank his own invisible wounds, the survivor's guilt that clawed at his insides, leaving him hollow, just as abandonment had carved distrust into the dog's soul. Neither moved closer. Instead, they shared the space through nonverbal cues. Sam's soft, uneven breaths matching the dog's shallow pants, a mutual recognition of pain that needed no words. As Sam sat back on his heels, the dog shifted slightly, not away in fear, but into a position of quiet watchfulness, his amber eyes meeting Sam's with a flicker of understanding, as if acknowledging the parallel paths of loss that had led them here. Their healing would unfold in mirrored steps, Sam's unconscious reach for purpose echoing the dog's instinctive drive to protect building trust through the simple act of presence, a fragile bridge over the chasm of isolation. In that moment, the ruins felt less empty, the cold less biting, as two wounded souls began to sense the possibility of mending one glance at a time. The air thickened with urgency as Sam knelt before the rubble, the scrabble turning into a desperate guttural cry that clawed at the silence like nails on stone. There, half buried under a tangle of beams and shattered glass, the German shepherd thrashed weakly, his fur a chaotic blend of black and tan streaked with crimson, his body pinned in a vise of concrete that groaned under its own weight. Dust swirled in eddies around them, choking the breath from Sam's lungs, tasting of chalk and fear, while the looming storm clouds above rumbled like an approaching predator, fat snowflakes melting into icy rivulets on the debris. The dog's amber eyes locked onto Sam's wide with a mix of defiance and raw terror, his flanks heaving in labored pants that sent puffs of breath into the frigid air. Shock rippled through Sam like an aftershock. Those eyes weren't just animal. They were a mirror to his own fractured soul pleading without words in the chaos. The scene pulsed with sensory overload, the sharp crack of shifting rubble, the metallic tang of blood mingling with wet earth, the wind howling through gaps like a mournful wail. Titan, though unnamed, yet let out a low, pained yelp as another beam settled, heightening the stakes, forcing Sam to confront the ticking clock of survival in this shattered arena. Then a subtle shift. The dog tilted his head ever so slightly, a faint whine escaping not as aggression, but as a plea bridging the gap between fear and feeling. In that moment, Sam's mindset tilted the scales, tipping from self-preservation to a reluctant vow, I can't walk away, not from this echo of my own brokenness. Sam's hesitation shattered like the rubble around him, his body surging forward in a messy blur of motion, hands clawing at the debris with raw desperation. Fingers bled as he heaved against the beam, pinning the dog shards of glass, and splintered wood biting into his skin. The act imperfect and frantic grunts escaping his lips, sweat mixing with dust to streak his face like war paint. The dog snapped warily, teeth flashing in a defensive gleam, his body tensing under the shifting weight. But Sam didn't falter, whispering fragmented reassurances through gritted teeth. Easy. Hold on. I've got you. The beam groaned in protest, finally budging with a crack that echoed like thunder, freeing the dog's hind legs in a cascade of smaller stones that pelted them both. Titan, for that, was the name forming in Sam's mind. A titan of endurance limped free, his scarred frame, trembling, keeping a cautious distance as he shook off the grime, amber eyes flickering between gratitude and suspicion. The rescue wasn't clean. It was visceral, marked by Sam's heaving breaths and the dog's hesitant stance, but it sealed an irreversible shift from solitary survival to a tentative alliance. The first imperfect step toward something unbreakable. With the beam cast aside, Sam knelt in the settling dust, his hands raw and bloodied, extending slowly toward the dog, offering not command, but space, a torn strip from his jacket laid out like a makeshift bed against the encroaching chill. Titan circled warily at first, his limp, pronounced flanks heaving as he sniffed the air thick with the scent of freedom and fear, but something in Sam's steady gaze, a mirror of his own unbroken will, drew him nearer. Sam uncapped his water bottle, pouring a shallow pool into a concave stone, whispering, "Here, drink." His voice a fragile thread in the wind's howl. The dog approached with caution, lapping tentatively, his tongue rasping against the water, eyes never leaving Sam's. The first glimmers of response, flickering like embers in a dying fire. As Titan settled a few feet away, not touching, but present, a silent bond wove between them. Sam's internal vow echoing in his thoughts. I won't leave you to this hell. We'll face it together. The moment was raw, imperfect, with the storm's first flakes swirling around them, but it marked the dawn of healing, a quiet promise sealed in shared vulnerability where pity gave way to partnership. In the shadowed lee of a half-collapsed wall, Sam and Titan settled into an uneasy truce, the air between them thick with unspoken barriers, like frost etching patterns on glass. Titan kept his distance a deliberate 3 paces away, his body low to the ground, muscles coiled beneath his scarred coat, ready to bolt at the slightest provocation. A low growl rumbled from his throat when Sam shifted too quickly, the sound a defensive wall echoing the guarded fortress Sam had built around his own heart. Both refusing to yield, both scarred by losses that taught them solitude was safer than surrender. Sam respected the boundary, sitting motionless against the cold stone, his eyes averted, but aware, offering no demands, only presence as the wind whispered through the ruins like forgotten secrets. Their mutual silence was a language of its own. Titan's ears flicking at every rustle, mirroring Sam's tense shoulders, neither initiating contact, yet neither fleeing a fragile standoff where vulnerability simmered beneath the surface. In this watchful quiet, the first threads of understanding wove invisibly Sam's thoughts, drifting to his father's patient rescues, Titan's instincts gauging the human's steady breath, hinting that time, not force, might bridge the chasm. As dusk painted the ruins in muted grays, Sam unwrapped a meager find. A dented can of beans scavenged from a toppled store, his fingers fumbling with the pull tab, the metallic click echoing like a hesitant invitation. He portioned half onto a flat stone, sliding it toward Titan from afar, the act a quiet offering that bridged their shared hunger, both literal and soul-deep, a mirror to the emptiness gnawing at them. Titan approached with wary grace, his nose twitching at the scent. Amber eyes locked on Sam's, reflecting the unspoken wounds, the dog's flanks still heaving from pain. Much like Sam's chest tightened with grief's unrelenting grip. He ate cautiously from a distance, his jaws working methodically, while Sam chewed his share slowly, the bland taste a reminder of survival's bitterness, their silent presence weaving a tentative connection through mirrored suffering. No words, just the soft sounds of consumption in the fading light. In this moment, the ruins felt less hostile, the cold less invasive, as Titan's gaze softened, imperceptibly observant but no longer purely defensive, hinting at the budding empathy born from recognizing another's quiet agony. Night cloaked the ruins in velvet shadows, the only light, a sliver of moon piercing the clouds, when Titan's sharp bark shattered the stillness, a jolt that sent Sam bolt upright, heart hammering like the quake's aftershocks. The sound wasn't aggression, but alarm directed at a distant clatter, a brick tumbling from a precarious pile, yet it triggered a cascade in Sam's mind, pulling him back to childhood nights by the fire where his father's rescue dogs would bark in unison, their voices a symphony of purpose during training drills. Listen to them, Sam. Dad would say, his hand on a German shepherd's flank, much like Titan's. They sense what we can't danger, hope the thin line between. The memory flooded with sensory ghosts, the warmth of the hearth against the chill, the scent of wet fur and pine. Dad's steady laugh contrasting Sam's boyish awe. Titan paused mid-bark, his head cocking as Sam murmured, "Easy, boy," the words a bridge to that lost world, tying their pain through the echo. The dog no longer recoiled. Instead, he held still, amber eyes softening, as if recognizing the shared echo of loss. The gentle gesture, a hand extended, but not touching, building an emotional tether without utterance, a quiet acknowledgement that their wounds were kin. Sam scavenged scraps of dry wood from the debris, his hands numb from the deepening cold, stacking them into a makeshift pyre in a cleared patch, amid the ruins, the strike of a match, birthing a tentative flame that danced like a forgotten spirit. The fire crackled to life, its warmth pushing back the winter's bite, casting flickering shadows that played across Titan's scarred form as he inched closer, drawn by the heat's primal call, his body uncurling from its defensive hunch. For the first time, a soft nudge from Titan's muzzle brushed Sam's leg, a playful test, not threat, sparking an unexpected bubble of laughter from Sam's throat, raw and rusty, like sunlight piercing storm clouds after endless gray. The sound surprised them both. Titan's tail gave a hesitant wag, his eyes brightening with a spark of joy that mirrored Sam's fleeting warmth, the space between them shrinking as the flames popped and hissed, symbolizing the budding trust. Sam tossed a stick into the embers, watching Titan paw at it curiously, the simple play easing the weight on his chest. Thoughts whispering, maybe this is what Dad meant finding light in the dark. Their relaxation deepened bodies, easing into the glow. The fire's embrace a metaphor for their warming bond, where acceptance bloomed from shared sanctuary. The ruins whispered with the soft patter of snow as Titan's resolve cracked like thin ice under warmth, his body moving of its own accord, inching forward until his scarred muzzle brushed Sam's outstretched hand, a tentative touch that sent a shiver through both electric with unspoken surrender. Sam's breath caught his eyes, widening in the dim light, tears welling unbidden as he felt the rough fur under his fingers, the dog's warmth a balm against the cold void that had gripped his soul since the quake. Titan leaned in further, resting his head fully on Sam's knee, his amber eyes closing briefly in a moment of pure vulnerability, the weight of his body a silent declaration. I choose you, flaws and all. Sam's internal world flooded with emotion, thoughts tumbling like freed debris. This is trust, raw and real, echoing Dad's lessons on bonds forged in fire, his hand stroking gently, tracing the scars that mirrored his own invisible ones, the act drawing a soft sigh from Titan, tension melting from his frame. The moment peaked in quiet intensity, Sam's tears falling onto Titan's coat, mingling with the snow as the dog licked his hand, once a gesture of full acceptance sealing their emotional breakthrough. Around them, the world felt reborn, the bond unbreakable now, a lighthouse in the desolation, where mutual surrender promised healing's dawn. The fragile peace shattered subtly as Titan's ears pricked upright, his body stiffening like a bowstring drawn taut, a low growl rumbling from deep in his chest, at shadows that danced unnaturally in the dust-choked ruins. Sam felt the shift immediately, the air thickening with unspoken tension, the dog's alert posture hackles raised, nose twitching at faint scents carried on the wind, foreshadowing a threat before any human sense could detect it. Instinct ruled Titan, his amber eyes scanning the horizon where distant footsteps echoed faintly like ghosts from a buried past, stirring echoes of trauma that made his flanks quiver. The environment morphed from sanctuary to snare, the settling snow muffling sounds, but amplifying the unease, each flake a veil over hidden dangers. Sam's pulse quickened, mirroring Titan's stillness, his thoughts racing. What does he sense? The dog's primal vigilance, honed by abandonment and abuse, painted the scene with subtle dread, a quiet prelude to resurgence. The tension coiled tighter as Sarah emerged from the swirling dust, her figure gaunt and hardened by survival, her eyes widening at the sight of Titan recognition flashing like lightning in a storm. "That dog! I know him," she whispered, her voice cracking the fragile calm, triggering a visceral surge in Titan. His body rigid, a ferocious snarl ripping from his throat, protective aggression blooming from deep-rooted trauma as he positioned himself between Sam and the newcomer. Flashbacks assaulted Titan's senses, the sting of a handler's boot, the chain's cold bite during that forsaken wildfire, abandonment's sharp betrayal, leaving him howling into emptiness. Sam felt the flood too, his heart pounding and sync emotions erupting like buried fault lines, panic gripping his chest as Titan's barks echoed his own suppressed rage at lost guilt surging for not sensing the danger sooner. Sarah stepped back, hands raised, her story spilling out in hurried breaths. He was part of a rescue team left behind by that bastard mayor's crew experiments, they said, but it was cover for something darker. The revelation peeled back layers of past abuse. Titan's eyes wild with maternal instinct to shield, though no pups were in sight, his growls a primal shield against the ghosts resurfacing. Sam shouted over the din, "Titan down!" his voice laced with fear and empathy, the explosion binding them in shared vulnerability, a glimpse of the town's rotten underbelly threatening to swallow their nascent bond. The shadows lengthened as the mayor materialized from the haze, a hulking silhouette in a dirt-streaked suit, his eyes cold calculations beneath a veneer of concern, striding into the ruins like a predator reclaiming territory. "That mutt's mine," he barked, voice laced with authority that masked malice, his presence igniting immediate recognition in Titan, a savage snarl erupting body lunging forward on his chain of loyalty teeth bared in primal fury at the man who had once been his handler's boss, the architect of abandonment. Sam froze the confrontation, turning tangible, the mayor's hand twitching toward a concealed holster, words dripping venom, valuable asset trained for disasters like this, or caused by them, as Sarah gasped, clutching a crumpled document from her pack. Evidence of the earthquake's man-made horror fracking experiments gone wrong under his orders. Emotions clashed in the standoff. Sam's fists, clenching internal monologue roaring, "This is the monster who shattered everything, my family, the town, now us." Titan's growls deepened, hackles raised like spikes, his scarred form a shield as the mayor advanced, a tense verbal barrage ensuing. "Hand him over, boy, or join the rubble." The air thick with sweat and dust, sensory chaos amplifying the threat. Flashbacks intertwined Titan's memories of whips and cages under the mayor's regime, Sam's of his father's warnings about corruption in high places, the physical proximity escalating to a near brawl, Sam's shove meeting the mayor's grab, Titan snapping at ankles in defense. The flashpoint peaked in raw intensity, bonds tested, secrets unraveling like frayed wires, forcing a desperate retreat as the mayor snarled promises of return, leaving them breathless in the aftermath's silence. The mayor's footsteps faded into the dust, leaving a heavy silence that settled over the ruins like fresh snow, muffling the echoes of confrontation. Sam sank to his knees beside Titan, his hands trembling as they found the dog's coarse fur, the warmth grounding him against the chill of fear that lingered like a shadow. Titan's growls had stilled, but his amber eyes remained vigilant, scanning the horizon for threats, his scarred body pressed close to Sam's side, a silent vow of protection mirrored in Sam's own resolve. The air smelled of damp earth and acrid tension, the storm's first flakes melting on their skin, but the physical closeness was a lifeline, a quiet reaffirmation that they had faced the past and survived. Sam's thoughts churned heavy with the mayor's words and Sarah's crumpled document, yet softened by Titan's steady breathing. "We're in this together now, no turning back." No words passed between them. None were needed. Titan shifted his head, resting briefly against Sam's arm, a gesture of trust that sealed the traumatic chapter, anchoring their bond in mutual defiance against the darkness. The ruins felt less like a grave now, the promise of safety, a fragile but fierce ember glowing in their shared silence. The fragile calm shattered as subtle signs crept into the ruins like cracks spreading through brittle stone. Titan's ears flicked forward, his body tensing, a low whine escaping as he caught a faint, unnatural hum. A broken radio crackling in the distance, its static a sinister whisper against the snow-muffled quiet. Sam's pulse quickened, his gaze following Titan's to the shadowed edges of the rubble where indistinct voices murmured, too deliberate to be survivors calling for help. Sarah's face paled as she clutched her pack, whispering, "The mayor's men, they're hunting us," covering his tracks. The document she held, stained and torn, confirmed the earthquake's cause. Illegal fracking orchestrated for profit, with survivors now a liability. Titan's instincts painted the scene with dread. His nose twitched at the scent of oil and sweat, his hackles rising like sentinels, watchfulness radiating from his coiled frame. Sam's thoughts raced, echoing his father's warnings about predators in power, the ruins transforming into a maze of threats, each creak and shadow a signal of pursuit, pulling them deeper into a suspense-laden hunt where survival demanded vigilance and trust. The subtle warnings coalesced into terror as the mayor's men burst from the shadows of a collapsed warehouse, their figures silhouetted against the dimming sky, guns glinting like fangs in the low light. Sam, Titan, and Sarah were cornered in the narrow confines of the rubble-strewn alley, the air thick with the scent of gun oil and sweat, the threat explicit and unavoidable, a direct confrontation that stripped away any illusion of safety. Titan's growls thundered his body, a shield lunging at the nearest assailant, teeth snapping in defiance while Sam clutched Sarah's arm, his mind reeling from the found document clutched in her hand, blueprints of the fracking sites signed by the mayor proving the quake's deliberate origins for buried profits. Physical decline gripped them, Sam's legs buckling from exhaustion. Titan's wounds reopening in crimson streaks, Sarah's breaths ragged from a hidden injury as the men advanced barking orders. Hand over the papers or join the dead. Imminent loss loomed like the crumbling walls around them, the standoff a vice tightening emotions raw in Sam's internal cry, "This can't end here, not after everything we've survived." The ruins echoed with their shouts, the life-or-death stakes palpable in every heartbeat, pushing them to the brink where escape seemed a fading mirage. In the heart of the trap, tension crested like a wave about to break, forcing Sam into a decisive moment where protection blurred between man and beast. Titan moved first, his scarred body, a blur of fury lunging at the lead assailant with a savage growl, teeth sinking into an arm as gunshots cracked the air, his action a selfless shield, transforming the chaos into a path for escape. Sam, heart pounding with the weight of choice, grabbed a loose rebar from the rubble, swinging it wildly to deflect a blow aimed at Titan, his mind flashing. I won't lose him, not like Dad committing fully to the fray, pulling Sarah behind cover while shouting Titan's name. The reversal of roles electrified the scene, Titan defending Sam as Sam shielded him, their bond, the anchor in the storm. Sarah's quick shot from a scavenged pistol buying precious seconds. Emotional resolution surged as the assailants faltered, one down from Titan's bite another, fleeing from Sam's unyielding stand, the decision to fight together an irreversible change, shattering the mayor's grip and forging their alliance in fire. With the threat repelled, breaths heaving in unison, the climax resolved in cathartic release, their mutual protection a testament to healing's fierce power. The echoes of gunfire faded into the hush of falling snow, leaving Sam, Titan, and Sarah huddled in a makeshift shelter carved from the ruins, a leaning wall draped with salvaged tarps, the air inside thick with the scent of damp earth and blood. Sam moved with deliberate slowness, his hands bandaging Titan's fresh wounds with strips torn from his shirt. Each rap, a gentle pause, the dog's flanks rising and falling in sync with his own ragged breaths. Sarah sat nearby, her eyes distant, tending a gash on her arm, the minimal dialogue reduced to soft murmurs. "Hold still," Sam whispered as the world outside blurred into white silence. Long, soft sentences lingered in the mind the crisis had passed, but its weight pressed on a quiet decompression where survival felt like a fragile gift. Titan shifted closer, his head dropping with exhaustion, the peaceful atmosphere, a balm signaling not just endurance, but a tentative return to safety. Emotions uncoiling like smoke from a doused fire. In the dim glow of a salvaged lantern, healing unfolded in mirrored rhythms, Sam and Titan weaving their recovery through small, repeated actions that spoke louder than words. Titan followed Sam with a steady gait, his limp easing day by day, while Sam offered food from his hand, the dog's warm tongue brushing his palm, a sensory ritual of trust, the crunch of kibble mingling with the soft rustle of snow outside. Sarah's stories of the town's buried past whispered over shared meals, grounded them, her voice a steady tempo intertwining behavior and emotion. As Titan lay close, his fur against Sam's leg, a constant warmth. Over time, their bond deepened silently, Sam's fingers tracing Titan's scars, evoking memories of his father's touch. Titan responding with a nudge, urging Sam forward, their paths converging in mutual solace. The ruins transformed through these gestures, eyes meeting in quiet understanding breaths, sinking in repose, the emotional weave a tapestry of resilience where each small act mended the fractures within. Dawn's first light pierced the ruins like a hesitant promise, casting long shadows as Sam and Titan stepped out together, their strides sinking in a quiet rhythm that spoke of unbreakable unity. Titan's head brushed Sam's leg, a deliberate lean that lingered, his amber eyes lifting to meet Sam's. A single, profound act symbolizing total trust, the warmth of contact releasing a flood of emotion, tears pricking Sam's eyes as fear's grip finally loosened. The motion was intimate hands hovering near, fur breaths mingling in the crisp air, a rebirth marked not by grand declarations, but by this simple walk side by side, the town's fractures below fading under their shared step. Yet in the distance, a faint echo lingered, the mayor's shadow, not fully banished, a subtle reminder that peace was earned, not eternal.